After going through the module, you will learn about the different ways in which the science can contribute in resolving the legal issues in both criminal and civil cases, and develop awareness about the various stages of crime scene investigation. Also get information about the importance of protection of crime scene, physical evidence, how they are recognized and searched at the crime scene before documentation. As we are all aware that a crime scene is a place where actually the unlawful act has taken place and is always unique. So there cannot be any single right way to process every crime scene. Each scene has to be evaluated individually. There are no hard and fast rule for the successful crime scene processing. There is a need to have a flexible approach to the crime scene processing. Nothing can substitute experience.
Now, let us move to aim of a scientific investigation. Students, as you know, crime scene investigation works on two important factors, that is the logic and feasibility. Processing a crime scene is a tedious job that involves logic, how event might have been taken place, and then feasibility of that event is checked. Once these two issues have been resolved, then it is followed by recognition and thorough search for any left and physical evidence that is left at that particular place. The collected physical evidence packed properly at the scene and sent to the forensic laboratory along with the list of requirements for scientific analysis in the laboratory. These scientific opinions not only help us in reducing our dependence on the witnesses to minimum, but also link the suspect and the victim with each other and with the scene of crime. In all the crime cases, victim and crime scene is mostly known as available, and the only missing link is the suspect or criminal who has committed the crime. So, finally, the identification of suspect is required with the help of physical evidences lying with the victim and the crime scene, or sometime with suspected person also. To achieve the above set aim, the crime scene processing has to pass through a number of stages. Now, let us see the various stages in physical evidence analysis. Analysis of physical evidence can be divided into two major stages. The first stage is crime scene investigation, that is, the investigation start from the crime scene, which is a meeting place of the person involved in the commission of crime and where the exchange of traces take place. The physical evidence originated from crime scene required to be recognized, documented, collected and packed. After that, second stage started, which is the laboratory investigation, where all the evidence collected from the crime scene are sent to analyze scientifically according to the requirement of the investigating officer, and report is prepared. Finally, that report is presented before the court of law to take final decision in that particular case based on scientific outcome. So, for conducting a successful crime scene investigation, whole process can be divided into protection of crime scene, recognition of evidence, searching of evidence, documentation of crime scene and evidence, collection of evidence, marking of evidence, packaging of evidence, analysis of evidence, interpretation of result, and followed by the reporting of results and expert testimony. All of these stages are important. The action taken at the earlier stages determine the quality or success of the final outcome. Discussions on these stages also points out differences between the traditional science and the science of forensic science. Now, let us go through the protection of crime scene. As soon as the information reaches the police station, the police have to perform two important duties. First, sending the police staff to the crime scene and protect it at the earliest so that access to it is strictly limited. Second, informing senior officers, including the forensic science team, about the crime. Certain problems, however, remain, and serious mistakes are commonly made at the first stage. Such mistakes are often irreversible and have potential to compromise or spoil an investigation, jeopardize a prosecution, or effectively deny a defendant due to process. Of course, protection or perfection is any other human effort is never guaranteed. However, investigator must develop a habit to learn from their mistakes of the past and make every effort for continuous improvement. Duty of the first officer is not allow unauthorized person to enter the scene after the scene has been secured. These makes sense, but this important rule is often ignored or sidestepped during practice. The scene can be considered secure only when it has been ascertained that suspect or witness and living victims have been removed and an adequate staff has been deployed to safeguard it. It is also clear that the search for a suspect or a victim must take precedence over physical evidence concerns for the movement. In fact, these activities should be carefully monitored and recorded by the first officer or any other responsible individual present. Seemingly insufficient details such as initial position of the furniture, doors, windows and light switches and any subsequent alterations of these need to be noted and documented carefully. The body must be removed rather left undisturbed until that scene has been finally processed and thoroughly documented. Essential evidence on the body or information regarding its relation to the crime scene may be lost if attempt to remove is hasted. Of course, if there is any chance that the victim is still alive, medical aid by a medical professional is certainly necessary and should be arranged urgently at the earliest. Those admitted to the scene after it has been secured should only be those persons who are capable of making a contribution to the investigation and whose presence is actually required. This means that this simply curious amongst the detectives and police officers, the members of public and the press should not be allowed as far as possible. This might be difficult at that time, but such exclusion is more readily accomplished in those departments where a clearly enumerated policy and is firmly enforced. If the department's policies are unclear or not enforced, it becomes embarrassing for the officer in charge of the scene to exclude influential politicians or high-ranked individuals. However, even in these situations, some fairly effective tactics should be adopted and utilized. These tactics will serve dual purposes. The first of these is to discourage entry by non-essential person, rather an confirmatory risk in attempting to prohibit it. This eases the burden on the first officer in charge. The second purpose is to minimize the damage caused by the entry of the crucial officials. Several inmates have an almost irresistible urge to clean up the disorderly office or residence where the crime has been committed. It is not unusual to find secretaries, housewives, maids cleaning up the crime scene where the police reaches at the scene. This can't be allowed to continue. At this point, it is duty of the first officer to document what has been done and elicit as much information as possible about the condition existing processing to the cleanup, in addition to putting an end to the cleanup and rearranging. The suspect should not let back to or any case be allowed to enter to the crime scene. Otherwise, it would compromise the evidence that might be developed later to associate the suspect with the scene, and that could also be used to great advantage by defense attorney. The first officer's duty or responsibilities, and once he hand over the control of the crime scene to the investigating officer along with the important information available with him about the crime scene, but to maintain continuity, the presence of first officer at the scene is necessary during the entire investigation process. Sometimes in certain cases, the results of the laboratory are not conclusive because of the carelessness either in protecting the crime scene or recognition of proper evidence. The exclusion of a particular suspect is also useful result. The investigator has to be very meticulous and vigilant in assuming that everything is significant and protect the scene accordingly. There are many cases in which seemingly unimportant evidence gains importance as the investigation proceeds. It is very unfortunate if such evidence are destroyed or neglected before its importance is recognized. Now, let us move to recognition of evidence. As soon as the scientific team reaches the scene, their most important duty is to observe the crime scene and start recognizing, searching the evidence present at the scene. Recognition of evidence is the fact, one of the complex and difficult job for the investigator, for which no set of rules have been framed, as there is no single approach to proceed or to have a procedure which enables the scientists to recognize particular evidence. This ability develops only with the training and experience to the investigator, but investigator has to remember that he has only one chance to visit and properly examine the crime scene. Crime scene investigator must be able to differentiate the significant and relevant evidence from insignificant and irrelevant articles that may be present at the scene. Since every case is different and unique, what is insignificant is one case may prove to be crucial for another case. This places difficult demands on the investigator. Crime scene experience and knowledge about what can be done in the laboratory helps the investigator to conduct useful and successful investigation at the scene. Careful observation and adequate time to devote to his duty. As long as proper precautions regarding possible perishable evidence are being observed, the job should not be rushed. The importance for investigator is to take his or her time and think about the relationship to that act under investigation, so that significant evidence must be recognized. Mental reconstruction greatly facilitates recognition of such relationship. Recognition of evidence extends into the laboratory investigation. There is a need to have good communication between field investigators and the laboratory investigators, which may result in important evidence being recognized, collected and submitted to the laboratory. A scientist knowledgeable about the details of a case can be far more effective than acting solely in response to a routine request for analysis. If the right questions are posed to the laboratory investigator, the most successful or useful answer will be imminent. Comprehensive documentation techniques are most effective in helping to communicate details of a case to the scientist who is unable to be at crime scene. Now, let us move to the search of the evidence. Searching and collection of evidence at crime scene are backbone of any criminal investigation. The primary purpose of a crime scene is to search for associated evidence to develop a link between a suspect and the victim with each other and with the scene of a crime, and become capable to answer the following crucial questions like: who perpetrated the crime, how the crime was committed, why the crime was committed, which circumstances led to commission of crime. In the recognition phase, chances are always there that some of the evidence could not be recognized, but the mental reconstruction or according to the available information during the recognition phase may imply that certain items are missing and need to be sought. Example of these items in the form of evidence can be weapon, tools and expedite cartridges, cases, etc. Such searches may also be prompted by either information obtained from preliminary reports from the medical examiner or from witnesses or viewers. Another type of evidence includes the broken fragments of glass having potential of physical matching. A search and examination for these types of evidence become important on the spot. Scientists can't complete an extensive search and then think of something else to seek particular when he looking for some evidence based on information received and mental reconstruction. This would be a waste of time and worker resources on one hand, and worst part is that the desired evidence might be destroyed during the process. Careful instruction must be given to the auxiliary searches as what to do and what not to. Mostly, the large-scale search operations have normally been carried out by a small number of knowledgeable and skilled persons. It is extremely imperative for the investigator to decide and to use an appropriate search patterns to conduct an effective and successful investigation while processing a crime scene. This will be of great support in searching evidence at the crime scene thoroughly. Now, let us see the common search pattern. Several different search patterns have been recommended, some of which are commonly used, known as spiral, grid, strip, quadrant or zone pattern. The decision as to which of the particular method is to be followed depends mostly on the nature of the crime scene. But whatever specific search pattern may be selected, the objective remains the same, that is, the search must be conducted in a logical, systematic, thorough and methodological manner. First one is strip search, also called line search method, which is used by one of the two investigators by walking in straight line across the crime scene. Next we have the grid search. In this method, search is conducted by two or more people overlapping separate line searches forming a grid. Next is quadrant or zone search, another search method in which the crime scene can be divided into smaller zones or quadrants according to their convenience, and the team members are assigned to search each section thoroughly. And the last we have the spiral search. In this method, the investigator moves either from an inward spiral to periphery or from periphery to the central spiral. The initial survey of every crime scene can be carried out by the lead investigator by walk through the crime scene to get an overview and formulate a plan for processing the crime scene. Particularly, a strip grid search method is mainly used. Depending upon the outdoor scene, the search may be required to be conducted along the pathway by using any of the given method. In indoor scene, particularly where area is bigger, such as in factories, it may not be practical to search the entire premises. Instead, attention must be forced on the points of entry and exit and targets area like safe or vault, etc. The investigator is the best to judge to select an appropriate method to search for evidence and should also thoroughly check the likely paths taken and means of transportation used by the criminals between these areas. For example, scene of suspect arson, which are somewhat like other outdoor crime scene, especially if the suspect enter the crime scene by breaking. There is a need to search for cause and its origin. Specific points concerning tracing fire pattern to their origins and the search for accelerant and incendiary devices become important for the search. It is also important and relevant to search a suspected person for useful physical evidence, particularly in sex or other crimes where contact with the victim is required to establish, like hairs and fiber should be searched. Now let us summarize what we have learned in this module. The collected physical evidence are packed properly at the scene and sent to the forensic science laboratory along with the list of requirements for scientific analysis in the laboratory. In laboratory investigation, all the evidences collected from the crime scene are sent to analyzed scientifically according to their requirement of the investigating officer, and report is prepared. Those who admitted to the crime scene after it has been secured should only be those persons who are capable of making contribution to the investigation and whose presence is actually required. This means that the simply curious amongst the detectives and the police officers, the members of public and the press should not be allowed as far as possible. Searching and collection of evidence at the crime scene are backbone of any criminal investigation. The primary purpose of a crime scene search is to search for associative evidence to develop a link between the suspect and a victim with each other. Thank you.